On my table, I have the 3D wrap feeling upgrade. Now, it may look a little bit confusing, complicated, but there's not much to it. I do have lots of bits and pieces here since I am reviewing this, so I have more than you would normally need, but we'll go through this in a moment. So what this is a rumble kit for adding a tactile effect to your pedals. Now, you can actually use these on other gear as well, but the main purpose is pedals. Now, this hardware itself runs off SimHub, so it's going to be compatible with any racing game that uses SimHub, so it's very easy to set up, and I'll show you that in a moment as well. So yeah, software side is very simple to do. The hardware side is also quite simple. Now, I have 3 different kits here, but their purpose is identical, and the only difference is we have different mounting. So this piece is their universal mounting motor, and it has a sticky pad on that side, so any flat surface you want to mount this to, that's what this is for. So you can see we have 2 of these. Now, these ones are for the 3D wrap Nagasa pedals, and what we have is a frame which is designed to fit on the top of the pedal at the rear and just screw into place, and that's how that works. I do have some Nagasa pedals, so I'll show you that in a moment as well, mounted to my pedals. And these final ones are for the Fanatec CSL pedals. And I do have a set of Fanatec CSL pedals, so we will test those with these as well today. If we take a closer look, you can see this is the 3D printed frame, and the motor is sandwiched within that frame here. The way the tactile effect works is the motor rotates these weights. So under this cover here, because that's a 3D printed TPU sort of plastic cover, under there are some metal weights. And of course cable that runs off the motor, which goes into this controller box. So the controller box has 4 channels, which means you can run up to 4 of these motors at once. We also get this power adapter. It is a 12 volt 3 amp power supply. Be aware that this power supply has a 2-pin EU plug on the end, so no matter where you're on the world, you'll get this same adapter. Now, you can just convert it using like a travel adapter to convert the pins to whatever you need it to be. So if I'm in the UK, I'll need to use a 2-pin to a 3-pin adapter, which is fine, it'll work that way, but it does add some friction onto the setup. Now, an alternative would be simply to use your own power supply, since it is a basic 12 volt 3 amp power supply. So no real problems there, and indeed the plug on the end is a standard style plug. So yeah, you can use an alternative, so you've got options there, use your own power supply or just get a travel adapter to convert those pins. Installation is straightforward, so I'll jump into that next and get these attached to my Fanatec CSL pedals, and then onto the software setup, and the final segment of the video will be the testing and evaluation. In SimHub, there's nothing complicated about the software setup. So the first thing we want to do is go to the correct section in SimHub, and the one we want is labelled Shake It Motors. Under Profile Manager, you can see I have 4 3D Wrap profiles. I downloaded these directly from 3D Wrap and imported them into SimHub by clicking Import Profile. Now these profiles are presets that tune the output effects. You can adjust these later, but they give us a baseline to get started with. For instance, the formula profile has pre-selected road vibration, traction control and wheel lock. Also take note of the percentage strength values of the effects. Loading the rally profile, instead of traction control, the wheel slip effect is now active, alongside the road vibration and wheel lock effects that we had turned on previously. At the top of the window is a slider to alter the overall output strength of the motors. That's something you'll want to experiment with. In SimHub, we can test the motors under the Motor Output tab. I'm going to make a broad assumption that you've used a gamepad at some point, in which case you've already experienced this type of rumble motor. So if you think about the vibration effect you get from a gamepad, the 3D Wrap feeling upgrade is doing the same sort of thing, but with a major increase in raw power. The fact just a single motor was able to shift these pedals on my table demonstrates how powerful they are. At 100% output, they are pretty crazy and seriously overpowered. You likely won't run those motors beyond 40 to 50% of their maximum strength output. So there's plenty of overhead to play with, and those motors are never straining. You observe that the motors are working independently. This is because the effects are separated. On the throttle pedal, we have effects relating to traction control and wheel slip. I've also added the gear change effect so I can feel the gearbox thump whenever I transition between gears. On the brake, we have ABS and the brake lock effect. Separating the effects per pedal makes sense as those effects directly relate to the pedal itself. ABS and locking the brakes is only possible when I push the brake pedal, so it's logical to lay out those effects in this manner. You don't want to load up those pedals with too many effects, especially ones that may overlap, since you'll lose track of the information of what's being fed back through the pedal. But you are free to experiment in SimHub with all the effects it offers. The 3D Wrap profiles give you a practical baseline, so I would recommend you at least start off with those. The sensation I'm feeling through the pedals is a strong vibration, even through the soles of my shoes, and powerful enough to pass into the heel plate. The strength of the effects are the result of the speed of the weights getting spun by the motor. That gives you some sense of being able to distinguish between the different effects. Before I had this all set up, I was concerned that maybe there would be a noticeable delayed reaction from the game to the motors. From my perspective, driving this car, I can feel the vibration from the pedal when those tyres lock up, so it does seem to be in sync. If we slow this footage down, you can observe some latency, and that's something to be expected really. But I will stand by what I just said, because they do spin up quickly enough, and I'm sure you won't be aware of any delay either, so I can give them a clean pass on this test. There's no build-up or run-off of the vibration sensation. It's like an on-off switch. You get an immediate full kick from that effect through the pedal, and likewise when the game stops sending the signal, the vibration stops immediately. This does make the sensation come across as artificial rather than progressively organic. In practical terms, it's actually quite useful having force feedback coming from the pedals. When you lock the tyres and the brake pedal vibrates, you might notice this physical feedback before you do from the car on screen, so potentially a handy driving aid. Adding any type of tactile to a sim rig is a great way to increase immersion, and certainly the 3D Wrap feel upgrade adds immersion. One negative that must be discussed though, and that relates to this type of product or any type of base shaker alike, and that is anything that outputs tactile vibrations attached to the sim rig produces noise. And there's no way around that. Noise not only from the motors, but those vibrations are transmitted through to the surrounding structure they're attached to, and they too vibrate and in turn amplify the sound. Beyond the rumble, there's a whining sound from the motors that's hard to ignore. If you wear headphones, you won't hear this. With my speakers running, I can't hear this either. However, the whine seemed abnormal to me, so I brought this to the attention of 3D Rap and sent them a recorded clip to inspect. Their response was really interesting and insightful. Now apparently, according to 3D Rap, the controller board is sending a PWM signal to the motors. That's the same type of electrical signal that 4-pin PC fans use to control the fan speed. And that's not the ideal way to control these motors, according to 3D Rap, that's what they told me. And the result is the whine. Now the good news is the controller board can be updated via firmware updates, and there will be an update in the future that should correct this. When the firmware update is available, I will run out a follow-up video and test it out, so keep an eye out on the channel, and I will also add a link in the video description below this video when that video is up. A fair question to ask is, why didn't they simply release this with the correct firmware installed? Now, I don't have a good answer to share with you today. Maybe they should have just held off the product launch to get it right from the start. For what it's worth, 3D Rap told me they haven't received any negative feedback regarding the sound of the motors. So there you have it. They also told me they are working on a wind simulation kit using the same controller box. And this opens the real possibility, and I mean real possibility in the fact this is their current plan, of running the rumble motors and the wind simulation fans at the same time from a single controller box, and making full use of those 4 channels, which is really quite interesting. So as it stands right now, that whine is not really pleasant, but there should be a firmware fix on the way. So if you think it's going to bother you, maybe hang fire until that's sorted. Since I have a couple of other sets of these motors, these are the Nagasa pedal set motors mounted. Of course, the performance is identical and just a different mounting bracket, and they fit very neatly onto these pedals as well. As for the universal motors, I haven't found a use for those yet, but if I come up with a cool idea, I'll let you know. In summary, 3D Rap have created a tidy and convenient kit with custom fit mounting brackets designed for several popular brands of pedal sets. The hardware uses SimHub, so game compatibility is assured. The output of the motors is undoubtedly potent. No one can say they aren't powerful enough, that's for sure. The addition of tactile effects coming from my pedals provides useful feedback from the game. I found the brake effects the most useful. Personally, I'm less interested in having a rumble motor on the throttle pedal. Some may like it, but for me that brake pedal is the more essential pedal to have a rumble motor attached, in my opinion. You can buy this kit with 1 or more rumble motors or add more later, so you have the option to start off with a single motor and maybe expand your setup later. And don't forget, the potential to add wind simulation fans in the future is a bonus. An alternative to rumble motors are bass shakers, and they're able to output high fidelity nuanced tactile effects that will outperform rumble motors. So there is technically a superior option out there, but that's not to say the Feeling upgrade kit isn't capable. It certainly is, especially when it comes to how much vibration these compact motors can produce. It's a lot more than you would expect. As an addition to my pedals, I do like them, and critically the only negative I have being the motor whine, and hopefully a future firmware update will address this. Before I end this one, and maybe I should have said this a little bit earlier, there is a way for console owners to use this kit on their pedals. I'll drop details in the description notes. It'll just be a link to the page where you can find all the details and the setup process. Now, I don't have a suitable console for this, so that's not something I can test and not covered in my review today. But it is a thing and added value to what you can do with the 3D Rap Feeling upgrade kit, so that's good. And hopefully that covers everything you need to know about this product. So we're going to sign this one off. And finally, guys, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, happy simming and bye-bye.